Oh my God, I can feel your energies. It is so incredible. I am just dripping in sweat right now. And the guys are going, oh yeah, dripping in sweat. What t-shirt? Anyway, we're going to have a good show tonight. I am having Chad.C.Meek back on, and he's a writer, producer, entrepreneur, UFO abductee, and researcher. And he's going to talk about his book called The Giant Rock. And the last time I had Chad on, they censored us a lot. So I figure I might as well just start off like this. And not that I really want to, but you know, you never know when you got a new censor around and they just don't know how things work. So for whoever my censor is for tonight, let me remind you how karma is going to work, okay? And if you're going to mess with me, this just giving you a heads up if you're going to mess with my program tonight. All right, well, I'm just going to remind you about karmic return. And it's not only going to be directed at you, but all your crew, including all your bosses. And I'm going to go to the karmic board and ask if it was for your highest good that you receive a karmic return over 100,000-fold for any of your negative work, and that it be done immediately. And guess what? They'll probably say yes because they're friends of mine. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, huh? And it'll really suck to be you. Now, this is only if you mess with my program or anybody else's program that's a light worker. Okay, so this was also what you're going to have to look forward to. And this is karma. So everything you touch down is going to break down because we're going to cut all the ties to everything you touch, all your phone and electrical equipment, your computers, all your accessories, cars, planes, helicopters, bikes, everything you touch is just not going to function. But also it'll be done in a way where nothing or anybody's going to be hurt or harmed. Now, if you're out of balance with nature, and you probably are, we're going to call to all the rats, mice, centipedes, bees, fleas, mites, snakes, spiders, flies, and all those really fun creatures, mold and mildew, to infest everything you own, including your work environment, including all your computers. Now, of course, this is only if it's for your highest good and you're messing with us. And God, I'm not done yet. So you're going to see me in your dream state, right? And you're going to see I'm going to be incredibly beautiful, long hair down to the floor, awesome dress, because that's the only kind of dresses goddesses wear. And just when you think that I'm the most beautiful woman you've ever saw, my hair is going to shapeshift into snakes, and now you're going to run, and you're going to run like the wind, and you know, it's not going to matter because my snakes are fast and they can shapeshift, so they can get real small or really big, and they're going to find you wherever you are, and when they do, they're going to bite you, and when they bite you, you're going to turn human. Does that give you warm fuzzies? And you're going to have compassion and kindness and all those wonderful, beautiful human traits, heart, all that stuff. And it gets even better because the venom's going to be so strong, it's going to affect all your generations backwards and forwards, 100,000 at least. And they're going to turn human. So anyway, I just wanted to remind you, trolls and censors, of how karma works. And, you know, just giving you a heads up. So what I want to do right now is give you your radiation level for the week. And I do this because I want you to remember that you are being, and everyone is being radiated to death from what's going on at Fukushima. Of course, all the other reactors are going off, but man, Fukushima's been 4 years of them spitting radiation into the air, into the water, and none of the governments are doing anything. So when you listen to this, you have to remember that a lot of this is actually partial counts, the readings that I'm going to give you. And the unaccounted radiation actually makes the count higher and more dangerous. So, a lot of the cities aren't going to be truthful and give you the whole spiel. Now, normal radiation is 5 to 20 CPMs, period. Anything over that is not good, not healthy. Okay? Remember that. Magic number, if it's over 20, not good. All righty, so here we go. Concord, New Hampshire, 560 CPMs, 112 times normal. Boston, Massachusetts, 355 CPMs, 71 times normal, and this is a partial. New York City, 424 CPMs, 85 times normal. Pittsburgh, 844 CPMs, 169 times normal. Raleigh, North Carolina, 120.4 times normal, 602 CPM. And this is partial. Atlanta, Georgia, partial, 373 CPM, 74.6 times normal. Miami, Florida, partial, 502 CPMs, 100.4 times normal. Chicago, Illinois, partial. And when I say partial, they're only giving the gamma and not the beta. And it says you can count on it, that's going to be higher. So Chicago is 258 CPMs, 51.6 times normal. Fort Wayne, Indiana, 689 CPMs, 137.8 times normal. Indianapolis, Indiana, 258 CPM, 51.6 times normal. St. Paul, Minnesota, 343 CPMs, 68.6 times normal. Lincoln, Nebraska, 706 CPMs, 141.2 times normal. Des Moines, Iowa, partial, 297 CPMs, 60 times normal. Aberdeen, South Dakota, partial, 340 CPMs, 68 times normal. Rapid City, South Dakota, partial, 232 CPMs, 46.4 times normal. Kansas City, Kansas, partial, 427 CPMs, 85.4 times normal. Tulsa, Oklahoma, partial, 460 CPMs, 90 times normal. Little Rock, Arkansas, 668 CPMs, 133.6 times normal. Dallas, Texas, 443 CPMs, 88.6 times normal. San Angelo, Texas, gamma and beta, 454 CPMs, 90.8 times normal. Lubbock, Texas, partial, 237 CPMs, 47.4 times normal. South Valley, New Mexico, partial, 444 CPMs, 88.8 times normal. Albuquerque, New Mexico, 530 CPMs, 106 times normal. Grand Junction, Colorado, partial, 340 CPM, 68 times normal. Billings, Montana, one of my favorite places, partial, 927 CPMs, 185.4 times normal. Phoenix, Arizona, 434 CPMs, 86.4 times normal. Tucson, Arizona, 698 CPMs, 139.6 times normal. Las Vegas, Nevada, partial, 225 CPMs, 45 times normal. San Diego, California, partial, 536 CPMs, 107.2 times normal. And I'm really sorry, guys, that this is for the United States only, but I didn't put these together. Bakersfield, California, 825 CPM, 165 times normal. Los Angeles, partial, 302 CPM, 60.5 times normal. San Francisco, partial, 253 CPMs, 50.6 times normal. And Spokane, Washington, partial, 406 CPMs, 92 times normal. I mean, are you shaking in your shoes yet? There is no safe place anywhere in the United States. You cannot run, you cannot hide from this. So who is the highest recorded radioactive city in America this month? Well, it goes again to Billings, Montana. And like I said, they're at 920 CPM, and that was partial. So Pittsburgh, just under Billings. And you have to think that Pittsburgh is actually surrounded by nuclear power plants, including 3 Mile Island's reactor number 2, which exploded and melted down on March 28, 1979. So, that is your radiation weather for the week. And really, guys, be safe. Make sure you do those cleanses. Go online and really look at how you cleanse, if whatever you can do to survive from radiation poisoning. Now, when we let the bombs go in Japan, people were doing miso and seaweed, and that kept them very clean. Well, unfortunately, we also cannot use that stuff from Japan, but it does help. And there's many, many other really good cleansing things to do to help you stay a little bit healthier from the radiation. If you're outside a lot, take cherry juice to strengthen up your heart, because the radiation goes to your heart. If all of a sudden you are aching, the radiation also goes to the bones. Now, you might want to take a bath and put a pound of salt in it and put a box of baking soda in it, and then a pint to a quart of hydrogen peroxide. So the salt and baking soda not only kind of neutralizes the radiation, but it helps pull out the aluminum that they dump on us through chemtrails. The hydrogen peroxide puts oxygen back into your body, so it's free oxygen therapy. And I find when I do this that actually I have more energy the next day. I certainly feel better. So, you're worth it. Give it a try. And what I want to go through with you again is, before I bring Chad on, is Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. Now, Saul Alinsky was one of the greatest American community organizers, and he actually was the founder of community organizing. And people that did a lot of organizing and protesting didn't start winning until they started following his concepts. So for those of you that are activists, and I think many of you are, pay attention, take notes, because you can also apply this to what you are doing. And if you want to win, pay attention. And remember, the art of war is deception by the enemy. They're not ever going to tell you the truth, okay? Anyway, all right, so this is Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. Rule number 1, power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Power is derived from 2 main sources, money and people. Have-nots must build power from flesh and blood. And these are 2 things which there is plentiful supply. Government and organizations always have a difficult time appealing to people, and usually do so almost exclusively with economic arguments. Rule 2, never go outside the expertise of your people. It results in confusion, fear, and retreat. Feeling secure adds to the backbone of anyone. Organizations under attack wonder why radicals don't address the real issues. Well, this is why. They avoid things which they have no knowledge. Now, rule number 3, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Look for ways to increase insecurity, anxiety, and uncertainty. Now, this happens all the time. Watch how many organizations under attack are blindsided by seemingly irrelevant arguments that they are then forced to address. Rule 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. If the rule is that every letter gets a reply, send 30,000 letters. You can kill them with this because no one can possibly obey all of their own rules. Now, this is a serious rule. The besieged entity's very credibility and reputation is at stake. Because if activists catch it lying or not living up to its commitments, they can continue to chip away at the damage. Rule number 5, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions. Pretty crude, rude, and mean, huh? But they want to create anger and fear. So rule number 6, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. They keep doing it without urging and come back to do more. They're doing their thing and will even suggest better ones. Radical activists in this sense are no different than any other human being, and we do all avoid the unfun activities, but we really revel at and enjoy the ones that work and bring results. Rule number 7, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. So don't become old news. Even radical activists get bored. So to keep them excited and involved, organizers are constantly coming up with new tactics. Rule 8, keep the pressure on. Never let up. Keep trying new things to keep the opposition off balance. As the opposition masters one approach, hit them from the flank with something new. Attack, attack, attack from all sides, never giving the reeling organization a chance to rest, regroup, recover, and re-strategize. Rule 9, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Imagination and ego can dream up many more consequences than any activist. Perception is reality. Large organizations always prepare a worst-case scenario, something that may be furthest from the activist's mind. The upshot is that the organization will expend enormous time and energy creating in its own collective mind the duress of conclusions. The possibilities can easily poison the mind and result in demoralization. You have to admit, these are pretty cool rules. Okay, rule number 10. If you push a negative hard enough, it will push through and become a positive. Violence from the other side can win the public to your side because the public sympathizes with the underdog. Unions use this tactic peaceably, but very loudly. Demonstrations during the heyday of unions in the early to mid 20th century incurred management's wrath, often in the form of violence, that eventually brought public sympathy to their side, and they won. Rule 11. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. Never let the enemy score points because you're caught without a solution to the problem. Old saw, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Activist organizations have an agenda, and their strategy is to hold a place at the table, to be given a forum to wield their power. So they have to have a compromise solution. Rule number 12. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Cut off the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions. Now, he says this is cruel, but very effective. Direct, personalized criticism and ridicule works. And if you really look at what is going on in the world and how the other side and the neocons and the Republicans do their work, how they break up demonstrations, how they, oh my God, how they even get people into the president's power. And for those of you that remember George Bush and in Florida, when they were having that ballot issue, and all of a sudden, all these people come out of nowhere to make a lot of trouble. Well, it's taken right out of Bilsky's book. You know, it came out of nowhere. It got people's attention. And, you know, George Bush illegally won. Because if you look at all the votes that went to Gore, Gore should have won that election. Now, what does that say about your vote? Does your vote count? Oh, hell no, it doesn't. Not at all. Not one little bit. And they know how to manipulate you so well. They always give you two options to run for presidency. One is looking pretty good, and the other one is so bad that there is just no way in hell you're going to vote for them. Or they put out somebody like Obama who speaks, and he doesn't say anything. Yeah, we're going to have change. Okay, well, finish the sentence. Change to do what? It's like saying, I'm the chosen one. Well, okay, chosen to do what? Finish the sentence. But when you say, we're going to create change, that is such a broad statement that each and every one of you finished it for him. Whatever your activism was, oh, we're going to change in this, it's going to create change in this. And no, he never put out his agenda. And his agenda is for big business and the oil companies and the banks, and that is his record, period. He's just another puppet, and that's it. Well, I hope that is something that can help you, and that was Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. You can look him up online and read it and really absorb more of this information. You know, this is just the 12 rule step. I just gave you a little taste of it. That it can help you organize much better and, you know, become the winning side, which is what we are here to do. We are here to quantum leap the world into enlightenment, to help people shift, to reconnect to the Creator, to become spiritual awakened beings. And when that happens, everything else falls into place. Sometimes we think we got it backwards. Go for the enlightenment, and the GMO problem will fall into place. The water problem will fall into place. Why? Because people will be enlightened and they will know better. When you're really connected to the Creator and an awakened spiritual being, you have compassion, you're filled with love, and you know better. And yeah, you make mistakes, but you don't intentionally hurt people. You don't go down that road. You're connected to the Creator, to the divine, and you shift and you're on that level. So yeah, that's what the whole planet can be. And that's what I see it becoming. Well, let's see if we can drag Chad on. He should be hanging out.
Hello.
He's there. Hi, Chad.
Hello.
How are you? Oh, I can hear you.
Nope,
I can hear you.
I'm hoping you can hear me. I can't hear you for some reason. Hi, Cathy.
Well, Liz, what do we do? Because he can't hear us.
Whatever he did the last time.
I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear? Oh my God.
There it is.
Praise be. What'd you do?
I don't know. What'd you guys do? You did magic.
You can do magic.
I unmuted my microphone. That's the only thing I did.
Well, whatever it is, it's good. It worked.
I'm going to unmute and see if you can still hear us.
I can hear you loud and clear.
But can you hear me?
I can hear you, dear. Way over yonder.
All right. Well, we're good to go. See, I did my it could suck to be you reptilians or whatever, trolls or censors in the beginning. I thought I might as well let them know what the possibilities of karma would be if they messed with our show.
That was it. They know better.
Well, now they do. So there's no excuse. And, I think I'm doing a service by reminding them ahead of time, don't you?
I think you made them disappear. I think that it was kind of like giving grits in an anthill. They eat it and they blow up.
And I don't even see it. How totally cool is that? Well, Chad, you are a writer, a producer, an entrepreneur, a UFO abductee, and researcher, and you wrote this incredible book called Giant Rock, which I don't think they want out there because they keep censoring it.
I know, it's amazing. I don't know if I'm on the so-called bad boy or blacklist, but if not, I think I want to be.
Well, I was, of course, thinking and contemplating. It's like, now, why in the world would they want to censor you? Why? What is so special, about our conversation? And we're talking about aliens, and your uncle, Uncle George Van Tassel, for people who didn't hear the first show that we did, and explain to everybody who he was.
Well, he was the thorn in all of the linear society's backside for so many years. He was one of the early pioneers of the UFO contactee movement and actually led it. And he was the kind of guy. I kind of like to think I'm kind of like him too, in many respects. He had some very bad virtues, but his courage was extraordinary, and he was not afraid of anybody, including the United States government. And so they didn't like him. He spoke his truth, and truth really is the thorn in all these 3D people's. It's like a stick in the eye. I mean, they live a lie. They live in a subatomic lie, and so anything that comes out that even smacks of truth, Well, they want to converge on it and try to stomp it and stop it as much as they can. And they did the same thing with him. And he thought it was really simple. Hey, I seen a UFO. Hey, I came in contact with a UFO. Has other people also? Oh, yes. Okay, so we all have actually we've been experiencers. So what is wrong with that? And why should we hide the fact that we've had the privilege or whatever it is, and I can debate both sides of it, to in fact come in contact with extraterrestrials? And at the time, the government didn't like it. They didn't like him. They didn't like him telling other people that there was something more to their lives than that occurred in Washington, D.C., or some of the behavior that this country has been involved with, including above-ground nuclear testing, was wrong. And he would call him on it. And he'd do it with such sincerity, and he was such a nice guy and well-liked. But I'm always amazed at just the audacity of, like, hey, wait a minute, I am a human being. I am just as good as any congressman, any president, anybody else. We're all part of the human race, and I'm going to assert that I am as good, if not better, than anybody else here on the face of the planet. You know, this face of this planet here. So that kind of attribute, or moxie, you can call it, whatever it was, you got to admire the guy. And this is in the 1950s.
Yeah,
People didn't do that.
Okay, because I know a little bit about your history. Like I said, I've been thinking
Yeah.
about this. He didn't hang out with normal people. He hung out with Aleister Crowley, who was satanic. Uncle George was satanic. And I'll bet you, because most of the people in the government, I believe, do satanic work to stay in power, or they've got to be part of that.
Yeah, they all do.
They're afraid as hell of your uncle because he probably was maybe higher up on that high priest level.
You know, I don't know. You know, and you know, as far as his actual, practices, as far as the only thing I knew is that a lot of people that were following Aleister Crowley ended up periodically out at the Rock, including Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. Which, you know, I mean, anybody that ever read the book Dianetics, I mean, it's really a UFO story. So you put two and two together. I don't know the extent of what he was up to, but all the German Third Reich, all our rocket scientists really came from a Promethean or something extraordinary information. I don't know if my uncle was directly involved with that. But, I mean, hey, who knows?
Well, again, and because of our last conversation, and they censored us so much, I had to really think about you and why. And, but you mentioned, now, all this happened, you were like 4 years old. You know, you were, just a little kid. So, but your mother went religious on you, really became religious, for lack of a better word.
Well, now, you're right.
But now think about it. Now, your uncle is what, your father's brother or your mother's brother?
My Uncle George is my Aunt Eva's husband. He
was married into the family. Ooh, okay. So now, okay. So think about your sister marrying somebody who's satanic. Now, what only recourse do you have back then was to go find Jesus and really become religious, because that is, to me, the only tool you have to counter it.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of times there's a huge confusion as far as, and really, let's talk about angels. So whenever you talk about UFOs and you get into the whole biblical thing, the whole Judaic-Christian, which actually I wrote in my Facebook page, I said, anybody who's ever been involved in comparative religions, you have to essentially come clean with the reality of, number one, it's all astrotheologic, it's all numerology, and it's also space in UFO, because you have things like fallen angels. Well, fallen angels out of the sky. Well, that sounds like extraterrestrials to me. In fact, they even talk about them being evil entities. So, so yeah, there's a general thread and a theme with that whole thing. But in my mind, trust me, Cathy, I mean, you kind of, snuck in there on the whole thing. I used to think when I was growing up that aliens were evil, that in fact that it was just this, it's just not that simplistic.
Well,
I
but
wish it were.
again, you were an abductee when you were a child.
Yep.
And my ex-husband was abducted, and truthfully, I'm good. I don't go looking for them. I don't
Yeah.
want them to look for me. And if they're good aliens, then they leave me alone.
Yeah. I wonder, too, and here's something, and this is what's gone on in the family. Now, my mother, my own mother, which, she was literally a very troubled soul. And now her first husband was one of the original founders of the Hells Angels. Hello.
Oh, God. I love your family.
No, I tell you
They
what,
got character, okay?
let me tell you something. But it was, and he had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, and so and then he went to prison. So she had divorced him, and then had married my father, Richard, who was the brother of Eva. In fact, my father and my grandmother both lived with George and Eva Van Tassel for years because he was the baby of the family. Now, here's something too, and it's something, and I don't want to take a blood test, and I don't want to, but my mother, she had a habit of kind of swinging on both sides. She'd go extremely religious, and then she would go off the deep end, and then be very promiscuous and with whole alcohol and all that. These are family secrets. My uncle was the chief of all rounders in rounder, meaning he had a lot of people within a lot of girlfriends in the whole area. So people look at me and they say, "You look an awful lot like your uncle." I laugh at that. I said, "I don't even want to I don't want to find out."
Oh, God. Some family things you just want to leave alone.
Yeah, and that's what all my brothers and sisters used to tease my mother with, and said, "Yeah, we know what you did," and Chad is George, and that went on for years and years and years because of my abduction experience and the UFO thing. Everyone assumed that I was George's son, but I just don't. I have a hard time dealing with that. Anyways, I've got enough problems. Anyways, but yeah.
Whoa! Should we
So,
play dueling banjos?
you're right. I know. A dueling band. I know. It was like, oh God, we're in that world. But at any rate, yeah. So yeah.
Didn't
Who was
say that the last time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was he? And he, as far as even today, with all the research I've done, I've talked to direct people that knew him well, or at least they thought they knew him well. One was Gabriel Green, and he was an enigma, and he was this, this warrior seeking truth and letting the chips, go wherever they may be, and let them fall wherever they go. And so that's who he was. And he had a lot of battle scars for doing that too, but still, it never stopped him. He was pursuing not only time travel, research. He was pursuing disclosure long before guys like Stephen Greer and some of these other people that have come out with the newest stuff. He was the guy. He was the man. And so I have this both fear, Cathy, legitimate fear of this man, but yet I have this unbelievable amount of respect for his courage of speaking his truth wherever it was. So there it is.
Okay. What? You were abducted at 4, around that age. Abducted.
Yeah.
And you remember it?
I do. I mean, it's so, and apparently, and this is something I don't know, but I allude to it in my book, okay? And this is something I got. I don't channel per se. for some reason, a lot of information gets transmitted to my brain out of nowhere, and it's and usually it's fairly accurate. It comes out, and in my book, I actually have a thing as far as we call them these influencers, and they're time travelers that actually had built the gray race, that they're this hominoid race of the past, and that some of the people even during the time actually had constructed these grays, and that's who the short grays were, the ones, the small, or when I say short, the 4-foot grays were the ones that had actually abducted me. I'm not going to get any kind of huge intellectual battle as far as who they were, but I adhere to that a little bit. At least that's where I'm leaning. Is that that the grays were actually a manufactured hybrid race, and that it literally kind of and they've done all the damage and to a lot of souls down here. The other races never did that, so the other races of aliens never seem to do that. So I go both ways on it, but they were the grays. They took me up. I got inside of a spaceship, put on a table. They were doing experiments, and basically it was really quite. I was in terror. It was not a happy experience. It wasn't like rays of sunshine. It wasn't like, oh, good, I have these little people, I don't know who they are, sticking metal instruments up me every which way, and telepathically communicating with me, telling me not to worry. And the other message was that I'd be fine in the morning, which I wasn't. It left an indelible imprint. It absolutely did something to me, as far as the rest of my life. I mean, it literally, and that actually, created a certain series of stuff where I had missing time slots that I don't have any memory of being abducted, which maybe they took extra care putting the dummy dust or whatever they do, when I was older, so that I don't have an actual memory. The only thing I have is time being lost, 3-4 hours, where no one could find me out in the middle of the desert, and I was missing. So, and being young enough, that's that's a little bit more than a hike, even though I got around quite a bit out there. It still was quite interesting, and it seemed to follow me wherever I went. When we went back to we moved back to Pomona, I would also have these things come up, and it was really, really difficult to handle, as far as all that stuff, but yeah, that's essentially what happened, as far as that. So,
Well, your brothers and sisters, were they abducted too?
no, they have missing time period, and I don't know if I mentioned in the last show or not. We had an event where my younger brothers and sisters ended up in a refrigerator, outside. Ended up in a refrigerator, and no one knew how they got there. And the angels or whomever told me exactly where they were at. And I opened the door up, and they both had fallen out, and it was quite hot, and they were like, little chickens being hatched. And so, they were very young also, and they don't know how they got in the refrigerator.
Well, there's a good chance they've been abducted
absolutely.
too. Absolutely, like the whole family. So doesn't that make you feel a little less special?
Well, yeah, I do. But I mean, yeah, the special. I was listen, when you talk about special, I was really worried, because, I had early on, I had such severe learning disabilities. I stuttered profusely, and I thought that something had been done to my mind. And even back then, I was really aware of it, and I was consciously aware of the whole short bus or the basically the special ed and all that stuff. So I literally did what I could not to be partitioned off with that, and I think it was the wise thing to do. But I had great difficulty. I had great difficulty from that point on speaking a complete sentence.
They put you in frigging trauma. And,
Absolutely.
nobody could explain to you, and they probably said, if you speak anything, we're going to, hurt you or do something, So, I mean, you were only 4 years old.
Well, the interesting about my uncle was he actually had known it, and that was what really scared me. He, above everyone out there, had known that I had been abducted. Okay, and I don't, I couldn't understand how he knew, but I wouldn't admit it to him. I wouldn't tell. He says something's up with you. Have you seen the space people? And I go, no. I just
Oh, God.
and in my thinking it was, if I didn't talk about it, and if I could, and it was completely ridiculous, and if I didn't think about it, then it will all go away.
But if you think about it, you're probably protecting yourself because he was asking you, what do you remember? And
Absolutely.
you
And
were going, I don't remember any, what?
uh,
What?
well, also too, it's funny, him and he had said, well, I would then thereafter I just told him, I said, I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in UFOs. I was so, even at a very early age, I kept on telling him I don't believe it. It's almost like a mantra. And it's funny, one time he literally looked at me with those huge sunglasses he had, which looked like something like an Ant-Man or something that he wore, and this imposing figure. And he actually was one of his girlfriend, wasn't even my aunt, standing in front of the restaurant. He looked at me, pulls his glasses down. He goes, "But you will." And he caught me in this moment where he looked in my eyes, and I literally was fractured. And the only thing I could do was cry and run away. I just
What
didn't
a
know
jerk. I am sorry. He
what.
couldn't, it's like a battle of wills. He knew you were holding out, and it's like, well, I'm going to scare the shit out of you. And,
Well, he did. He did.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
what possessed you to write this book?
well, actually, believe it or not, as being, a lot of these issues. Again, I didn't tell my wife about any of this stuff till after 2 years for fear that she would, run away. Sorry. Maybe she didn't really plan on being married to a UFO abductee. Well, as it turned out, she was extraordinarily understanding. God bless her. We're still married. As far as that, she didn't run away, so that was a good thing. But really, what it did for me, both writing the screenplay and literally, I just wanted to have a man named Frank Kreitzer and my uncle George Van Tassel in the body of work. I wanted it to be all about them and all their adventures. And literally, I had that kind of that sinking moment because I always wanted to point to my uncle and to other people of having these experiences, and in as self-protection, because I didn't want anyone to know my little secret. So in reality, I had this epiphany, and I said, this is not going to go nowhere unless I get honest with my own self and get this stuff out and let people know that it's okay, that in fact you've experienced abduction. And even if you think that you've experienced abduction, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. As far as being ridiculed or having somebody, what's been the past, ridicule you, call you kooky, call you whatever names that they would have to essentially ostracize you for your own beliefs as far as what happened to you. I had this epiphany. I said, listen, if this will help one person, and if they can identify with some of this stuff and this one character, which is me in the book, then it needs to get in there. And from then on, it was like, zoom, 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 zoom. It was all done. The continuity between all the characters and everybody, it all worked because this book is written through a little boy's eyes, with his experience, with all of this huge, amazing events happening. And so, in fact, it was cathartic. It was almost, people kind of equate being cathartic as in vomiting. Well, in many respects, it was like, finally, I can breathe and I can be who I am, and I can be me, versus Mr. Calm, cool, slick businessman in a business suit, talking in something nonsensical 3D that business matters that absolutely don't matter to anybody, but this is important, and it allowed me, that little boy, to get his story out too.
I have to ask you, do you think that most of the aliens are friendly, or do you think they want to take over the Earth?
I don't think like the Independence Day buffoonery as far as that. These little men in Darth Vader suits are out to get us. You think about it, Kathy. I mean, we can look at this several ways, and I've heard some of the really great minds. The guy with the funny voice, Mr. Hawkins, and he was saying he equated it as being like Native Americans, that the outcome won't be too happy, that we should not seek them out, that they'll well, the answer
Oh,
is,
well, we're going on break, Chad.
oh,
Don't go away,
great,
and we will be
great.
right back. Chad, me. Welcome back, everybody. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show, and this is August 4th, then the second hour. Now, Revolution Radio is a listener-sponsored station, and nobody gets paid for doing anything here. So we really appreciate all your listener-supported donations. And if you would go to Revolution Radio and look up their donation button, everything is gladly and appreciated, that you can give, and it keeps everybody on air, which is very important nowadays. You're not going to get this on mainstream yet. So we've got Chad.C.Meek on that I want to get right back to. Chad, are you there?
I am.
All right. Now, you wrote a book that's called Giant Rock, and it has to do about ETs and your really interesting uncle, George Tassel. And what were we talking about before we went on break?
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was hoping. I was sitting in the last 2 minutes. I hope you remember what we were talking about.
I should have written that down.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's go on to something more fun.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah. Okay. The last time you were on, you talked about something called the integration machine.
Integratron. Yes.
How do you spell that?
It's spelled funky. INT. You see, and you're asking me to spell. Thank you. It's INTEGRATON. Integratron.
Oh, Ton. Okay, I thought it was Tron. Okay,
no,
good.
No, it is Integratron. Integratron.
Okay. I had to spell right. What is it?
It is a molecular cell rejuvenation machine that is, and also acts in as a time machine that has some apps with that. It's made out of wood. It's in a dome shape. It's out in the middle of the desert. And what people do now currently is they will go out there and they will meditate with various chimes and things like that, and they take sound baths because there's no metal obstructing anything. The energy just flows in and out of people's bodies, and it actually has rejuvenation. And several people, a lot of Hollywood celebrities, have been out there, and they rent the dome now, and they go and they meditate in there for hours, and they have some extraordinary revelations and things like that occur because of the GMSE and the power base where it's built on. And so that's essentially what it is, and that's what it was built for, and it's stood the test of time. Knock on wood. It's had some very interesting ownership transfers.
Who built it?
My uncle built it. It took him to get to where it is now. It took him about 18 years of painstakingly constructing this thing, along with donations by a whole bunch of people. But there was a lot of research that went into the construct of it. Some of his benefactors were Howard Hughes and some others who were very interested in, of course, medical. Of course, Hughes was a huge part of their organization was in medical research, and so it wasn't too far a stretch. There was a couple things that were too far a stretch. Number one, he built the plane out of wood, and he was in medical research, and my uncle worked directly for him. So, anyways, he was a frequent visitor out there, and until he went completely insane, he actually came out, flew his plane, and my
You're
aunt,
talking Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Before he went insane.
right, before, yeah, well, yeah. At least. Well, then again, I'm probably talking at a school. He might have been insane even prior to that. We don't know, but apparently he had a liking for my aunt's boysenberry pie, which she made out there at the. There was a restaurant out there next to the Giant Rock, and Howard Hughes would come out there, fly out there, have a piece of boysenberry pie, and then fly back to L.A.
How did your uncle die?
1978. He died very mysteriously. He was in Santa Ana, which is a good distance. I don't know if people are familiar with, logistically, but it's a good distance from Giant Rock, and no one could figure out what he was doing there. And he apparently had been at a hotel and was estimated to have been at hotel dead for over, I guess, 12 to 14 hours before they found him. But they don't know why he was there. And subsequently, all of his research papers after he died were mysteriously disappeared. They were gone, and no one knows who or what that did that. A little bit of it got saved, but a lot of it had gotten taken out. So there's some real black op things as far as in a mysterious death, and he had actually had a physical a couple weeks before, and he was in fact a health nut and was not a candidate for a cardiac infarction or whatever it was. And he died.
I was just thinking that he built this incredible machine that's rejuvenating and all this, and how did he die? Mysteriously. What happened to Howard Hughes? He went nuts. Okay. And you wonder if it had anything to do with this machine.
It could have. One of the things that he got, the instructions he got, and it was provisional of the information that he would get through his, I get it's really not channeling, but his data reception deal with the aliens, and it was provisional on his conduct, which he probably screwed himself out of a lot of information with some of his activities, like we all do. They wanted to be a little bit more pure in his conduct. That was one of the things, but it was provisional, and so they would literally, and then they would look around and see what would happen, and he would get these flashes of insight or schematics and stuff like that, and then he would, move on a little further, and so that was really the big. It wasn't just the structure; it was the ability to utilize the structure in the right way, and that was the purpose. But he told everyone, and that was the dream, was that he wanted people lined up, literally, miles out, who were sick and, with, cancer or whatever disease, to go in there and rejuvenate their cells and walk out the other free of charge. And so one of the quick ways to pearly gates is have any kind of breakthrough technology and don't charge for it.
How long after did he die after the machine was built?
Well, actually, it was built, but he had sent out. He had a newsletter that went to, I guess, 100,000 people worldwide. And a month prior to his death, he actually made a declaration that he had finally got the remaining information that would make it completely operational and literally get it going. And he was just excited and jazzed beyond all. He really felt that he had the Holy Grail and was proceeding with that whole thing. And that was a month before he died. So he actually advertised that, hey, I got it, and we're going to move on with this thing. And that was one of the last newsletters they sent. And then,
wow.
So,
wow, it's like a big
yeah.
Well, when you look at it from that end, it's very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. And wow. I've got to ask you, you're an astrologer.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about, September, and I asked you if you can kind of explain to us what in the hell is going on the end of September. Now, I've had a lot of people come up to me and give me some really weird information. One, there's going to be the big rapture, but I call it rapture number 5. And
Oh, what,
you know
another
what's
one? No,
yeah,
another
what's
one?
what I mean? Number 5, and okay, it hasn't happened again, so
Yeah.
don't sell the cars yet.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one is, a giant comet's going to come and hit the Earth. And, all I can say to that is, come on, people. If it does, it's going to be quick, and then we're going to be gone, and we're going to find another planet to grow on. Okay?
That's okay. We can handle that. That's something we put our arms around. Hey,
Yeah.
if you get, what a way to go,
Yeah. Stop the stress. Enjoy life. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I agree.
what do you see happening?
Well, I mean, I've looked at this, and incidentally, I do, I have a private practice, and I see everyone from housewives to business people to commodities traders. I used to run a fund myself based on this stuff here, so I'm always looking at things from a financial perspective. And over a year ago, well, actually, let me see, more or less January, I started looking at some of the aspects that were occurring this year before all of this Shemitah and all the other, blood moons, and then all of a sudden it just got rampant. But some of my dates correlated with a lot of this activity in September, so it gave me some, some clues and some interest to sit there and meditate and see what I could get through these oracles that I look at. And essentially, I use my God-given psychic ability, and I look at the various planetary aspects, how they're communicating together, and then I'll shut up, quiet my mind, and get the message as far as what it is. But this is what I got on the whole thing. And I hope I'm wrong about this. And when we kind of joke about a meteor, I want to, if I had my druthers, I'd like to see the meteor. Okay, I'd like to see a natural phenomenon that isn't some sort of, false flag or anything like we've had in the, not only the Bay of Tonkin, also with the, 9/11, all that stuff. I hope we don't, my biggest, but I did the research, and the reality is that, on these transits, which in fact I tell people I'm not Jewish, but all this stuff is theologic. And I look at this stuff and the Shemitah and all of their folklore, it is saying something extraordinary is going to happen there. Now, I look at it from a completely different thing, different way. And I said, well, what's going on there? Well, what I'm seeing with the various things that are going on is an end of a cycle, and an end of several super cycles that are all kind of coming together at the same time. Now, I looked at every major crash going back from 1929. In fact, I even went back further. And
you've got your mic too close or something. Okay.
Am I a little loud? Let me turn my mic down. How's that? Is that better?
Good. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thanks. So, anyways, I went to 29, and I looked at where Saturn is. And so Saturn was in Sagittarius, the constellation tropical Sagittarius. Okay, so every time these huge market, they coincide with these Shemitah or whatever the name is, time cycles. So then we go up to 1987, October 19th. Guess what? Saturn is also in the in this mutable planet, in the mutable modality of Saturn. And then I go to year 2000, same thing. 2011, same thing. There's this one aspect that keeps coming. Well, we have that exact same setup that is occurring in September. Okay, and it follows these cycles. And so, okay, but I looked at this stuff too, and it's like everything. There's our whole universe is filled with truth and half truth and somewhere in between. But I looked at this thing here, and I correlated with the 9/11 thing, which I believe was a false flag, which reset the clock. And what occurred after 9/11? Of course, we erroneously went and killed Saddam. Basically, it wasn't him that even remotely did it. But what it rallied the country and made everyone forget about all the trillions and trillions of dollars of debt that was floating around. So I'm meditating on this stuff, and it says, okay, then we get the whole meteor thing, and the New World Order and the Illuminati, they're very good at telegraphing various things to set people up. I think that this is a likely scenario, not an absolute. I actually believe that, yes, with all the ability to portray holographic images that are so realistic you'd never know the difference, I believe we just might see a meteor or a holographic meteor fall into, say, the Atlantic Ocean, okay, and then underneath the water, you could have submarines place nuclear charges going out, which would create tidal waves and would create earthquakes. So I think that scenario for me is probably, if it's going to happen. And again, you always want to ask, well, why? Well, the why is essentially we've run up more money than we could ever foreseeably pay back. $18 trillion here in our national debt. We have maybe 200 trillion in social debt, and then we have 850 trillion in derivative, instruments out there that will all come collapsing down. So what they would like to do is portray an incident, correlate an incident along with that to give them the excuse to come around so we can all hold hands, sing Kumbaya, say, yes, we'll do a united order. We all need to get together as a team. That's a scenario that keeps on coming to my brain. Now, one thing that I don't do is bet against myself and what I think, because I've been right quite often. So that whole thing. But here again, okay, so if that doesn't happen, if we don't get the big meteor in the sky or Nibiru or, this, I think that based on a high probability, we are going to see a devastating market correction which is going to make a lot of the materialists feel like dying. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Isn't it kind of happening in China? It's
already happened there. One of my predictions, in fact, on my Facebook, was that something was going to occur financially from the July 23rd to the 25th, and on the 25th, the Chinese market dropped 850 points in one day. So I was spot on that, and I believe that was the preamble to this narrative of finance. We've had the commodities fall out of bed. We've had oil go from as high as 120. Right now, I think it's something around $40. Everything, all the stuffing has been completely devastated. And again, that also supports this other thing. But I mean, rather than act like adults, Cathy, and say, "Hey, listen, we screwed up. Let's do something different." The powers that be are going to create this gigantic false flag and blame it on, the proverbial scapegoat, blame it on something else other than our own, pure stupidity of running up all this debt and money for wars. And, I just wish that when they were passing out the, 100 billions, that they would have thought about either you or me. So we might have made but they didn't. They took it for themselves. So anyways, I'm not a part of the 1%. So, my fall and perhaps a lot of people can take comfort that our falls are going to be out of a single-story house, and I think we'll get into. I don't think it'll be as bad. But if just think about if you were living in that world and everything was material and that meant everything to you, your fall would be the equivalent of coming out of about the 27th floor. It's going to be painful.
Oh, let me play my violin, okay?
Me too. I said, oh, okay, well, anyway. So there is karma, and that's kind of what you sow, so shall you reap. And
so what are you saying, that we need to put away anything, everything? Save whatever pennies you can, buy a little bit extra groceries.
Yeah, I don't even know. I've thought about that too. And I'm one for have an extra bottle of water here, and of course that wouldn't hurt, an extra tank of gas. But I think this thing's. I think if it in fact, I think that would be the smart thing to do because it's not that expensive. I don't feel like I just think that it's going to be so absolutely dramatic that all that stuff's not going to really matter anyways, and that we'll have to really kind of figure it out. And hopefully, like in anything that is difficult, we learn from difficult times. We learn so much about not only ourselves, our neighbors, our family, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we're going to learn a lot, when this thing comes along. And I think it's okay. But if you remember, the world has been at war here. I mean, not here in the United States, but over in Europe. They had world wars in China. They've had devastating famines. In particular, the United States has been unscathed as for a lot of this stuff. It's kind of like we look at TV. If someone, like say for instance, someone down the street in L.A., if they have a 3-car collision and 2 people die, it's a big deal. Whereas if there's a dam that breaks in some remote area somewhere else and 2,000 people die, it's not as significant, at least to most people's eyes. Well, that should first of all, that should change. But that's how insulated the West, and particularly the United States, has been. And I think we need a real spiritual wake-up call, and I think we're going to get it.
I'm there. I'm working hard for it.
I know you are.
It's our destiny.
Hmm? Yeah.
So let's get back to your book, and I want to get to you. You were abducted when you were around 4. What changes did you see or you experienced, after you were abducted? Did you have any extra spiritual, gifts that you were given from the abduction?
Absolutely, there were. I was extraordinary. I mean, I was my psychic ability has been spectacular, and I have to equate it to that because no one else has it in my family. But I definitely, have that. We talked, in the past as far as the whole sexual energy thing was, for me, it was I was almost in a state of being crazy. I mean, as far as what a normal person, everyone in their I was pre-pubescent. I was so advanced, as far as that, I was thinking way ahead of my pay scale as far as, all that stuff. So there are a lot of things that were essentially were quite a lot to handle. But I also had people, I had experiences of voices coming out of the sky, and saying words to me, just clear direction on what to do, what to avoid, various accidents and things like that. I mean, I've and then as I've grown older, along with that, I've used these other tools. I've kind of refined some of this stuff. So, so in many respects, I was set apart, with it, and the whole, and I fought the whole specialness thing, night and day. I did not want it. It occurred. But now, at my age now, I embrace it because I actually kind of like myself. And I wouldn't be me had these events not occur. And so I have to embrace it. And I have a certain amount, and this actually helped me even with my neurotic mother and parents and things like that, is after a while, you look at it differently and you say, hey, who would I be without these people, even though they weren't they didn't conduct themselves in a perfect way? Who would I be without all these people and experiences? And I'd be somebody else. So you come to a point and say, hey, okay, I'm okay. I have the ability to help people, to assist others. And so the bottom line is that, through this whole structuring thing, it's been a good thing.
Would you go to abductees conventions?
I don't. I stay out of the political things, and like there was one, the Congress, UFO Congress. They have this annual meeting out in Joshua Tree. Well, several people tell me, say, hey, you want to go, et cetera, and I just don't want. Usually with the abduction experience, it's connected to these things. There's a lot of politics, and if you've ever heard ufologists, talk about what they, and of course everyone speaks with such authority, and in real terms, there's this ongoing battle. And actually, the funny thing about it is the same thing happened in my uncle's time too. Even there, like people like George Adamski and my uncle didn't like each other because they both had their own following, and so if someone went to another group, then there would become an issue as far as that. But there was all of this politicking going on, and I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to be involved in it. All I want to do is help people and, do my own thing, write a book, make a movie, and work that way very subtly versus trying to, talk about about how my abduction experience is better than yours or any of that stuff. But but having said that, when I meet personal people who have actually had abduction experiences, it's almost like coming home. It really does feel good to talk, and that's why I always give my email out in case anybody needs to talk to somebody about their abduction experience. I don't charge. I give my email out, chad@giantrockthemovie.com. It's night and day. I mean, I give freely my time, and I will spend whatever time to go through that and to try to process what they had experienced. And because I do know that does help. But that's more or less my contribution. I love doing what I do also is I go on wonderful radio shows like yours, Cathy, and it's a lot of fun. So my way is a little different, a little more subtle.
You find dead people, don't you?
Yeah.
Ooh. Now, did you have that gift before you were abducted?
Well, I was so young, as far as awareness goes. But, and actually, I mean, even before the actual abduction, I had an experience where I was out there in the desert, and it's really a very, and I got it in the book also, as far as that. I literally, as a little kid, I climbed on top of, there was this old Airways trailer that was all beat up that my grandmother lived in before the family built her house. So essentially it was abandoned and just out there. But I would climb on top of it and, through it, how I'd get on top of it, my grandmother had scraps and, paper and boxes that, literally kind of pyramided up the top of it. And it was out back. And I remember this is actually before the abduction, that I just lifted up my arms. And I don't know why I was thinking about God, because I would hear about God, and I lift up my arms. I said, if there is God, then call my name. Well, again, I don't know whether it's my luck or whatever. I heard my name called, and it was like somebody who was yelling in my ears, and it said Chad, and I was so freaked out about it. I was a little kid. I jumped off the side of it into the scrap pile, and I hit underneath my grandmother's bed. So that was just prior to it, because I mean, and again, I've always heard this thing: be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it. And I think that, so I had that, and then thereafter, that was the other thing. And I don't know whether now my uncle talked about an Ediphone, which he said, and I don't know who, I don't know who had answered. But
what's an Ediphone?
An Ediphone is what aliens talk out of, in outside of our universe, and they speak into an Ediphone, and then it goes through, and you get hit with an omni beam, okay? And that was the same feeling. It was a shocking feeling to hear the words and the shocking feelings. Well, I didn't know any of that until I have a collection of my uncle's writings. And he talks about that's how people get messages from extraterrestrials. So I could imagine that there was some, I don't know. I guess I'd like to sometimes call pranksters, or somebody that's sitting there watching this little kid up in all sincerity, and to say, hey, I think we'll give him his message. and perhaps that was it. I don't believe. I mean, consciously, I don't know if our architect or our God of this universe has time to talk to a 4-year-old little boy out on the top of an old trailer. But who knows? Strange things happen. But my guess is that it was actually some sort of extraterrestrial speaking through an Ediphone with an omni beam, and I got blasted with it. And so I got my answer. So from then, yeah, I mean, there's some God up there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's a Santa Claus one, but there's something up there. Yeah.
What did your uncle do before he started getting into extraterrestrials?
Well, he was a flight engineer, flight inspector, aerospace. Had actually made a big name for himself out in California's aerospace, especially prior to the war. He got his pilot's license at 16, and which was rare in Jefferson, Ohio, before he came out to California. And so he was always interested and always was tinkering around with stuff. He was a follower of Nikola Tesla and some of the other, I guess, weird science guys. And so he got a job because of his prior experience, he got a job early on working in aerospace, and that was the job to have back in California during especially the late 30s when it took off, before World War II when things were going, they're ramping stuff off. And so he made very good money and did very well, and actually had worked himself up. And and of course with the Hughes organization, they took great interest in him because he was a doer. He'd always, whatever problem came up, he would stay there until he figured it out. So he made quite a name for himself as a person, as a can-do guy. And
so
then
did he actually invent this way to talk to the extraterrestrials?
No. That was what he just got transferred. No, he didn't. That wasn't his. He was telling me what they used, and that's what he was calling it, was this Ediphone through an omni beam, and that's how. Well, he had a very hard time explaining what he did, because everyone, getting back to him as far as how to receive information, he just claimed it was a transfer. It was a data transfer versus like a seance type thing, where he would be, where there would be this, that kind of thing. So in fact, they attribute the word channeling to him, and it was quite by accident when they asked him, well, how do you talk to all these different entities? And he says, well, I get into, I'm in a deep meditative state, and it's like turning a channel. And so from then on, the word came, the whole terminology came with anybody that talked to, ghosts or whoever, that they or other entities from other dimensions, like Jay-Z Knight and some of the other people, as channelers. So that he was the first channelers, but that's not what he did. Anyways, a little bit of trivia. Bottom line is they told him that's how they, this one group told them how they communicate to people, and that's explained the voices out of the sky that many of the characters in the Bible had experienced.
How simple. What a simple explanation.
Right. Yeah.
Burst the bubble again, I mean, I was really upset when the kids told me, the Hobbit movie.
Oh,
I really thought they were small people. I went, damn.
Yeah.
And then the kids explained it to me, and it's like, don't burst the dream. Come on.
I don't hear that. Yeah, no, it's the same thing. I mean, like people, you get into the various, and it's funny through. Before the written word, everyone spoke in images and of course in stories, and they try to create these various motifs and various ways to demonstrate the story in real time. But in many respects, back then they actually saw things like that, and so they would explain their visions and what you have what have you. So it's just different. But they talk about giants that roam the world. They talk about taking the rib from Eve, which is DNA splicing. They talk about
what about that? Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Well, what this whole foundation, as far as this, we were created, and we were created by a mixture of DNA slicing, and there were accidents that actually occurred by various, not only inbreeding, the various people that came down. They always talk about the angels that came down and essentially had sex with the daughters of man, which created this obscure giant, which is equated to some of the later remnants, which is Goliath. These extraordinarily large people that they found all over the world. They've actually found these people, but there's been all these different mistakes. It's been a work in progress. I mean, as far as the whole evolutionary process, and so it's been a lot. So when they talk about the him, us, they don't talk about a singular God. They talk about we. When they were creating us, they took a rib, which actually would be a good way to do it. Do some DNA slicing out of Adam, and create a woman, called Eve. So we're in the people creation. Again, this is kind of like saying how to make sausage. No, everyone wants to eat sausage. No one wants to know how to make it. But the bottom line is
God, very base. Okay.
no one wants to know about the Hobbit story. But back then you actually had fairies. You had little people. All of the folklore and all of the things that we kind of just kind of poo-poo off. As far as this stuff, they're really talking about actual things that were occurring for that given time in the evolutionary cycle. So yeah, when you talk about, oh, please don't ruin the story about the hobbits, it's like the Easter Bunny, which also is a pagan holiday, and Santa Claus and all this other stuff, and of course what Catholicism did was mix it all together, and so now we have this bastardized hodgepodge of religion that's just probably overserved itself. It's good for maybe 100 years ago, but now it doesn't work as well. But
I love how you got there from the hobbits.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Don't get me started. Don't get me started about the Hobbit, Cathy. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I don't like the new ones, so what can I say?
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Getting back to your book, are you still being abducted?
No, that all stopped after I was 10. The experience, the psychic, and all that stuff has just continued. But the actual anything stopped at about 10. At least I believe it stopped at 10. And they were attempts. As I got older, I refused to go. And I remember one time I literally, after that one, I was on a swing set and they wanted me to go. And they were actually pulling me and telling me to let go, and I wouldn't, and they gave up. So that was one thing. But later on, stuff, as an example, we all my cousins, and this is actually in town. This would happen to me in town away from even Giant Rock. I'd be sitting there, with my cousins and everybody, and then I would somehow be removed, and no one would know that I was missing. And that used to drive me crazy. And at one time, my whole family went to the mall or the shopping mall, and there were probably 15, relatives, and they came back and they never even knew I was gone. It was kind of like the.
That's how they wrote the movie Home Alone.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that's the Home Alone thing. I had the Home Alone syndrome. I'd say, and I would actually be extraordinarily depressed that no one knew that I was not with them. And where was I? And so there's a lot of cloud as far as in my imagery, as far as that kind of thing. I probably was abducted during that time period, but I don't have any concrete memory of that particular time. I just know the feeling I had of having people not know I was missing. And so that whole loneliness thing came in. But yeah, other thing too. People, even older. Things like I had such tremendous faith in, and I thought everyone could fly because I'd seen people who flew. up there. And so I just assumed everyone could fly. No one could figure out, well, what was wrong with me, because I just assumed everyone could fly. And I assumed that I assumed my parents could fly. And eventually they would just laugh at me, but it really wasn't funny because I'd actually seen, something in my whole world of these flying saucers and things flying around. So I just assumed that everyone could. So it was kind of a matter of fact, but yeah, that was back then. But the book actually, we get into this stuff, and as far as that, and I think that's what's really interesting about, and I'm, of course I'm biased and prejudiced of it, but the bottom line is I like the story. I like how it works because it includes some of those viewpoints that, a lot of times parents don't even listen to their kids. And I think that, there's been such research, Dr. Mack, my God, I mean, he comes out with a number of possibly as high as many as 4 million people may have been abducted. And there have been others that have actually supported those kind of numbers. And I wonder how many children going to their, it could be busy parents or non-busy or even linear thinking or, so far gone with the Judeo-Christian that's just not within their consciousness. How many kids out there have actually experienced that and have no way of communicating it? And so I wanted to, that's also too a little sneaky. I'm sneaky as far as my writing. I want to get a lot of this stuff out there, and I don't want to be too. I mean, there's some blatant scenes both in the book and in the movie that literally show you get it. But there's some more subtle stuff that I also hope people get, which one of us is parents listening to their children, really listening to them, because I think that I think if kids were comfortable and knew that their parents would listen, I think it would create a whole different ball game as far as what is going on. Having said that, the main bulk of the abductions really occurred in the 50s and 60s during the time that I was. And it's surprising the volume of people that come from that era. Now there have been some since Travis Walton, some more or less adult, but it's primarily children that that are getting abducted. At least a whole majority of them are children and adolescents. And I've yet to, and I believe it must be some sort of I believe it must be some sort of testing or something like that. I don't know as far as the actual reason. I've gone over the map of this, and even today I don't know exactly why I was or why anybody. What would they gain other than maybe some tissue, some a spinal tap, an essence of real live human beings, which maybe
they messed with your sexual organs.
Yeah.
To begin with, and they did with my ex-husband and his ex-girlfriend, and they created a child which grew up to be really dark.
Yeah.
Really dark. And he practiced black magic, and he actually tried to kill everybody in the family.
Oh,
and
God.
I had to literally kick him off the property. A lot of what I know is because I had to learn to stay alive and keep the business going.
Sure.
Because of this, my ex-husband's kid. And he was in his 30s, so he wasn't no young, he knew what he was doing.
There is, when you open up that whole, that whole area, with that does happen. There's a potential for great good. At the same conversely, like everything molecularly, cellular, you have opposites, and so he basically chose to go into the dark side. And trust me, I've been pulled. I've had some extraordinary experiences with that, but it seems like with me. Most of them have been positive. Some have been, one, I had a spontaneous healing with some of this experience, and as innocent because of who I was, because of my intentions. But if you're in the astral realm and you're out there, okay, that you're bringing in a lot of stuff that normal people don't have to deal with, and it's very powerful, and it can easily screw your head upside down. and literally make you do things. And I have an opinion as far as a lot of people that are in prison, especially more of the violent people, that they are frankly victims of walk-ins.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree with you. Your energy gets lowered, and if you do a lot of drinking,
Mm-hmm.
that's your energy is lowered, and the lower astral plane literally gets in your body, and it's like seeing that person go from a really nice guy when he drinks a lot to this obnoxious drunk. And you
Evil.
go, yeah, I go, wow, that's not him. Well, it's not him. He's
No.
he got an entity walk in.
And that's what happens. And then, how many times you've heard this, especially after they've done some, hideous or, just incredible evil thing vis-a-vis murder or whatever. It's like they didn't know that they were even there. And literally they probably weren't there, but they have to suffer the consequences of, being, because of their actions that, they have to suffer from it. But that's been my theory, is that a lot of people, majority of them, are simply, there because of walk-ins, like you said, and they lowered their vibration and allowed these entities to come in and do what they want. And we have that. I mean, listen, there's a lot of good out there. There's a lot. Just think about it. There's a lot of bad. There's good spirits. There's bad spirits. There's good angels. There's bad angels. There's I think for the most part, as far as if you get into the intergalactic end of space travel, I think for the most part those entities are good. Interdimensional beings that travel interdimensionally are a little bit different, and that's kind of tricky, for me, because with these interdimensional travelers, you always wonder, well, what are you doing over here? What's your purpose? The intergalactic thing, as far as technology, with in fact going through wormholes and spaceships and things like that, for me is a little bit more palatable, because I know if I had the technology or the means, and I could go, say, for instance, to Chiron or go to Pluto, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I mean, I would love, just the adventurous part of me, not to do anything wrong, just to observe. So, but anyways, there's a subtle difference between all this stuff, but your nephew, I mean, that sounds like what happened to him, that somebody got inside of him and really caused a lot of destruction.
Well, or when both of them were messed with, and
Yeah.
and this is what the first child produced. Now the rest of his kids are lovely. All right, this one, no.
No. Well,
And you wonder if he got all the the bad DNA or whatever. Don't, or because the parents were also messed up.
People ask me too, are your kids? My son works for Warner Brothers. My daughter's a stay-at-home mom. There's about as normal. My son gets he gets a little uncomfortable with me, because I'm so I'm so blunt and so forthright on my radio appearances and my writing, because I'm just I'm not listen, I'm too old to try to suck up to anybody for any way, shape, or form. I'm just sorry, I am. I mean,
Well, no, don't apologize. I mean, we get to an age where we go, God, should we do it? It's like, no, let's see what's going to happen when we do.
When we do it, yeah. But but again, I mean, it's funny talking to him. When we're talking about September 23rd and during that whole September area and all that stuff, he gets very uncomfortable, speaking about it, and it's because he's led such a normal life. I mean, other than in one day we both saw, he did see a spaceship with me, and I actually argued with him about it, but no, he says, no, that is one. I finally looked at it closer and was able to, and said, oh yeah, and then it came back around the mountain and says, oh yes, it was. So he actually, but his life is so normal, and it's versus mine, but he's never had the total depth of experience I've had with not only the abductions, the sightings, the ghosts, the other entities, the interdimensional travelers that I've had visit me, and things like that. So he hasn't been in that world, and so it is this whole cognitive dissonance that most people have. They, when they go to work for 10 hours a day, they get done. The first thing they do is they'll watch TV and then go to bed and do it all over again. Well, my life's been completely different than his, so it makes sense. And my daughter too. I mean, it's not that I mean, I've been telling them, sharing these experiences with them, from a very early age, in order to prepare them in case there's some sort of connection. But apparently it just wasn't for them. And so they've been allowed these, I guess these normal lives that sometimes I'm somewhat envious of.
Wow, call that grace.
Yeah, great.
I've seen it go the other way. Trust me. Okay.
Yeah.
So how can people get your book?
Well, they can buy it, of course, and it would really, I would really appreciate it. I guess we've done pretty well. They can buy it at Amazon, Giant Rock. They can buy it at Amazon on Kindle. And, of course, if people don't have a Kindle, that doesn't mean you can't buy my book. You can get a free app or application that you can download to your computer that will allow you to read a Kindle book also. So, yeah, Amazon, they can buy the book. It's $4.99. And if they don't have the money, I tell everyone just to go borrow it.
Great advice.
Borrow it because it'll be well worth it. No, it's a quick read. I kept it. I combined the screenplay and the sequel into a novel shape, and it's actually easier for people, as in people in the movie industry, sometimes for them just to read the book. It reads very quickly. Once, and it's exactly pretty much how it was written on purpose, because it's been my goal is if you're looking at a movie, the one thing that I want you to do is I want you to remember when you sat down, and I want you to remember when the lights go on. And in between, I want you to get lost in this epic UFO action adventure of mine. And the book reads very, very quickly. I think it's 244 pages on that. I didn't want to make the book a 1,000-page documentary, and as far as that, and I used a lot of dramatic license to in fact not only give the story continuity, but also to tell some deeper meaning stuff, which is what I want people to do is see my characters not as necessarily good or bad, but as people that are evolving themselves. And at the very end, and each one of the characters, they do that. They actually get better during the movies, but they're challenged by, and I know for a fact we all are challenged. Most of us feel that we're challenged above what we can take at times. And I wanted to get some characters in there in all various demographics. And actually in the book, we have a kind of a mixed age group. I actually included the real name of my what we used to call my grandmother, which was Fat Grandma. Knock on wood, she was a saint. Her name was Henrietta, but all the cousins called her Fat Grandma. And so we even have that kind of we have a wise grandmother who understanding grandmother who's actually an angel in my own life. And so we have that. And I'm pretty hard on we have one character named Pastor Jack, who was a kind of a linear guy that, didn't like chase, believing in UFOs and wanted to make.
Chad, our time is up.
Oh gosh, it's up.
I know. I'm waiting for the music.
Where's the music?
We can say goodbye without the music. This is unheard of. I usually talk to the end. Oh, so she's going. Okay, time on. There we go. Thank you for coming back on, Chad. It was so fun. You've got to come back on again and do it. And
I will.
All right. Aloha. Catch everybody next week.